Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
And I'm Sam Abu Samad.
So, we're a little bit sooner this time, a little bit earlier than last
a few hours
Sunday.
sooner.
Yeah, it's Friday night. I mean, look, things are busy. You've been going to things, and we'll talk about it with what's coming up on the show. But we'll get to what we're driving first, and I want to see if your experience mirrors mine. So you've had the Volvo V90?
I had the V90 last week, and it was the non-cross-country edition. So it was the proper Volvo station wagon experience.
Was it brown?
The correct ride height, and it was in fact brown. The only thing that was missing was a manual transmission and a diesel engine.
Yeah, the manual transmission with the push-button Laycock J-type overdrive.
Yeah, but a brown wagon with the it was a T6 with the twin-charged engine, and it was good.
Yeah, it's a lovely car. Overall, I liked it. What was your impression?
I thought it was fantastic. I drove it when I was heading up to Flint for a couple of days last week to do the first robotics competition judging, and drove it to a few other things, and I really like it a lot. I'm a fan of station wagons, and I like this particular Volvo. I think I'm really going to like the V60 when it arrives here, probably later this year. They just revealed it at the Geneva show a couple of weeks ago, because I think the size of the V60 is a little more my preference. The V90 is pretty big. It's long, but it's funny. You look at it, and it is, it's a front wheel drive transverse engine. Well, it's a transverse engine layout, and comes in front wheel drive. This particular one was all wheel drive. But when you look at it in profile, it's got a surprisingly long hood line, so it looks like something that should be a longitudinal engine rear wheel drive vehicle, which has
it has the right proportions.
Yeah, no, and I think the proportions are really good. Like I said, I think I'll prefer. I mean, from the photos I've seen, I think I prefer the 60 series. It's the same platform, just shortened a little bit. It's a little tighter, than the 90, but the 90 is certainly something I can live with. And the interior is fantastic. I like Volvo's plug-in hybrid powertrain. But what I don't like, on the plug-in hybrid vehicles is that funky electronic shifter that they use, which we've talked about in the past. But the V90 or the non-plug-in, the non-hybrid version has the conventional mechanical shifter, which is I find a lot more pleasant and consistent to use. None of the having to tap it twice to go from park to drive or drive to reverse or anything like that, and ending up accidentally in neutral, things like that. We've talked at a fair amount of length, probably too much length about Census in the past. Certainly with Casey we did, and while I am still not a fan of the layout, this one, I don't know if they've made some changes in the software, pushed out some software updates. This one did seem like it was responding a little bit quicker than in the past. But like I said, it still has the same layout. So even though it's getting, swiping back and forth from screen to screen between the three screens faster than it did before, it's still a pain in the neck to go to the various things you want to do. Like, if you're in the home screen, the center screen, and if I had Android Auto up, and if I wanted to change the sound settings, you'd have to swipe left to get to the right-hand screen, tap on the sound settings, make the changes. And when you tap on the sound settings, you tap on anything on the right-hand screen, it brings it up in the bottom half of the home screen, the middle screen. And then to get back to what you were doing, you have to swipe back again and tap the other thing. The context changes. There's no back button to just go back to whatever you were doing previously, which I find annoying. And there's just too many taps to get to whatever you want to do, and trying to remember if you have to swipe to the right or swipe to the left to get to various things is a pain in the neck. It's just a bad user interface. And even if it's faster, it's still bad.
Maybe they're listening and they will take this all to heart. Unfortunately, I feel like that's a real big part of the whole experience for the V90. And I say it's unfortunate because, like you said, the rest of the car is really good. It's the right size. It's certainly brilliant for doing what you were doing with it, a nice highway run.
Yeah.
It's pretty comfortable. I am not as enamored with Volvo seats over the last 15, 20 years as I was of the earlier ones. And I think BMW and Mercedes premium seats are a little better because you have more adjustability. I would like Volvo to get some more adjustability in there of different parts of the seat, but it's very comfortable. It looks beautiful inside and out. That's what I'm just.
Yeah, I love the open pore wood trim in there. I am not a fan of high gloss wood veneers in cars, but I do love a natural looking wood veneer, and it looks great in this car. This one had the lighter, the tan colored leather, and then the walnut trim. And
is that the darker wood?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
looks
lovely.
Fantastic.
It's just, it doesn't matter what it costs because it looks very premium. And when you look at the sticker, certainly it's not a cheap car, but you look at what it comes equipped with as a T6, I'm sure it's pretty well loaded. And then you look at the design and the quality of the materials and the assembly. It's a very good car, and it's priced very well for its segment. Well, it's just certainly still expensive, I'm sure, but
yeah, I mean this one was $70,000. Was it $69,500?
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, so
like
it's $70,000, but it's a big wagon of which there aren't that many. It's all-wheel drive. It's got 300 horsepower with the T6.
315, yeah.
Oh, it's okay. So that keeps going up.
No, I think it's been 315 all along.
Has it? Maybe I just keep paying more and more attention.
You're just rounding to the nearest single, nearest most
100,
significant
right?
digit.
Right. Because that's and it's just like it's very distinctive. It feels like, I hate to say this, it feels like a relative bargain given its market segment for $70,000. I mean, it's certainly its most direct competitors are going to cost more equipped the same way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, probably the closest direct competitor to this would probably be a Mercedes E-Class coupe, which I'm pretty sure is going to be, or coupe, E-Class wagon, is probably going to be quite a bit more expensive, for something like this.
I think the E-Class wagon starts at like 60 something.
Yeah, the E-Class wagon starts at 63. And then, so for an E400 4MATIC, you're going to start at 63, and, in typical German fashion, as soon as you start adding any options, you're rapidly going to get, significantly more than that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Volvo is really in this sweet spot, and I think they're capitalizing on it very well too, where, certainly they're offering crossovers and SUVs for that part of the market that's actually buying, but they have these wagons that are this kind of niche product that everybody loves. Even if they're buying crossovers, they say, oh, that's a nice wagon. So eventually, if and when the tide does turn away from crossovers, they're going to have something there, you know. And it,
yeah,
like,
well,
it doesn't hurt them.
at this point right now, there's a lot of automakers that are hoping that isn't going to happen anytime soon because they're putting a lot of eggs in that crossover basket.
Yeah,
we'll get back to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could talk about that for sure. And Volvo themselves is putting their eggs in that basket. And honestly, like the V90 is really an XC90. Like, it's all that SPA architecture is redundant, but it's all the SPA platform. So
yeah,
it's all, you know, same pieces, sort of different arrangement. So it's not that expensive relatively for them to make the wagon version of the same car that's the crossover or the SUV. So it seems like they've done really well being owned and cash infused by Geely. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was actually it might have been about the XC40, which is coming too. But I saw something on Twitter that said, you know, Ford's biggest mistake was selling Volvo, and I don't think that's true, because I don't think Volvo today would be what it is if Ford hadn't sold it. I don't think Ford would have put the money that Geely put in to create this whole new range of models. You know, they've got 2 new architectures and they've refreshed, I think, the entire model range now.
Yeah, with the 40 series, it's all new now. I mean, I think we still have 1 or 2 more 40 series models yet to come. You know, like probably an S40 or maybe a C40, you know, or some sort of 40 series hatchback, which will probably won't come to the U.S. market. It'll probably be for Europe only, but we'll probably see at least 1 more 40 series model coming from them.
Yeah. So Ford wouldn't have done that, and if Ford had invested that heavily, it would be on platforms that are shared with every other Ford, you know, line. And
right.
And that's not to knock Ford, because I think they actually did a really good job with Volvo, especially in the initial part of the purchase. They rolled out a lot of stuff that was pretty groundbreaking and really had a pretty good identity back almost 20 years ago now. Back in the early 2000s.
And Ford leveraged that platform, you know, for the P2, I think.
Yeah, the P2 was the original S80, yeah.
Right. You know, they leveraged that platform for a whole bunch of Ford and Lincoln brand vehicles as well. So, you know, they got their money's worth out of that platform. For
sure. And I think they did a good job with the brand. I always found it, you know, slightly to my chagrin in the enthusiast mailing lists and stuff, where people would start knocking Ford ownership and like, you don't understand, like they don't have Saabs anymore. Saab people can't buy a Saab, so count your blessings. So we didn't beat up on Census that much this week. I think that's good.
No, and in fact, I've got more good stuff to say about Volvo.
All right, well, let's say more good stuff.
The other thing that surprised me, you know, I've been fairly critical of Volvo's Pilot Assist in the past, which is their level 2 semi-automated system, you know, that does adaptive cruise control and lane centering in the past, and I still think it's probably the weakest of the systems that I've driven, but it did, on this car at least, it did feel like it's gotten better. So, you know, again, I can't say for certain, you know, that they've made changes, but it certainly felt a little better on this one. It still struggles, you know, on the plus side, it seemed to do a better job with lane recognition than a lot of the previous S90 and XC90s that I've driven. So that part was better. Even in the rain, it did a better job with that. But it still struggles a bit with trying to hold the lane. You know, so, you know, if you're on a highway curve, it does tend to drift to the outside. You know, if you're not holding on, I mean, you're supposed to hold onto the wheel anyway. It's not a hands-off system. But if you kind of, you know, just kind of hold it tightly and don't really try to hold the lane just to see what it'll do, it will tend to drift out of the lane on a curve. You know, straight line, it does okay. So it's not a system that I would trust necessarily, you know, to keep you out of trouble, but it seems to be making some progress in the right direction.
Yeah, I think they've got to figure out too how capable do we make this system? So I wonder if there's sort of erring on the side of like, you know what, it's okay if it drifts out of the lane. That means that people can't get complacent.
Yeah, and
So
I don't think that that's actually what they want to do. Because that's certainly not the impression they give when they talk about it. If you look at the promotional materials, look at the videos, it makes it seem more capable than it is. But I've talked about this, and written about this on numerous occasions that, I am not, having driven many of these systems now, I'm not convinced that any level 2 or level 3 system, so those are systems that are partially automated or have conditional automation. So they're not, truly, they're not truly autonomous, but they will do some of the control for you. I'm unconvinced that that's necessarily a good idea or a net positive, because I think people are inherently going to tend to get complacent, even if they realize that it's not necessarily as good as they might want. And I was speaking on a panel at a conference this week in Detroit here on automated vehicles, and we were talking about human factors, and the other panelists also agreed with that we're not sure that this is necessarily the right direction to go, that until we get to fully automated vehicles, maybe we should back off a little and make sure that people really understand that these systems are not, the systems that are on the road today are not capable of being self-driving.
Yeah, I think self-driving has, I almost feel like it's peaked for the moment, the amount of buzz around it. And
no, not even
really?
close. Oh,
that's
no.
too bad. Because we're starting to see a correction in at least the messaging, like, hey, it's not fully autonomous. That's not really the accurate thing to call it. Maybe it's just my own personal echo chamber.
Yeah, I think there's a few people that are starting to say that. But I think a lot of the mainstream media is still very much on the upward gradient of the hype cycle. Just a week or two ago, there was a CNBC story that purported to compare Cadillac Super Cruise and autopilot, and I think it might have been the Volvo system, or maybe it was the Mercedes system, and declared the Cadillac the best self-driving system. And it's not self-driving. Period. Tell all your friends there is no self-driving system available on the market today from any car maker.
Right. The only self-driving system is you.
Yeah. As
I
long
like that. I should trademark that.
As long as the meat bag behind the wheel is the redundant backup system, it's not self-driving.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pieces that need to really go into it that are kind of up in the air right now. There's a pretty strong feeling among at least some folks that V2I has got to be a part of it. And so what does that mean if infrastructure is really integral to actually full autonomy?
I think V2I is actually less integral than V2V. I think V2V is actually more important, vehicle to vehicle communications, because that's more real time. A lot of what you're going to get from infrastructure is not the real time control stuff. That's stuff that we can do today with telematic systems. And all these cars already have that. So things like being able to get traffic signal updates. Those are not those aren't the real time control things. They can come in at a slower rate, and you're less dependent on those. I think what's more important is knowing the intent of the other vehicles around you, and what they're doing or about to do or what they're detecting. That I think is actually more important for automated vehicles.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Either way, we are years from any of this stuff actually living up to the hype, and honestly, it probably doesn't solve the problems that they're saying it solves yet. There's just other cultural shifts that have to happen before those problems get solved. Just giving somebody a car that drives itself still means you've got a single person in a car that has four.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other topic of coordinating the automated vehicles and mobility services together and with transit systems and so on to make sure that we're not just throwing more vehicles on the road and actually making congestion worse. And that's something I also talked about at the conference this week with somebody from Uber. And it was amazing talking to somebody from Uber that actually, seemed, to be like a human being.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But he was actually somebody that went to Uber, from an automaker. So he wasn't a Silicon Valley bro.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so he was capable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We shouldn't throw so much shade at Silicon Valley bros. I'll try to throw less.
Oh, they usually deserve it.
Yeah. All right. Oh. Why don't we just change the subject? Let's change the subject.
Okay.
So
where did you drive?
I had an Infiniti Q60S all-wheel drive, which, I've always been fond of the Infiniti coupes, the earlier G37, FM platform-based coupe was also one of my favorites. They've had a good basic coupe shape with this time around. It's got the pretty styling, the sort of striking design of the Q60 sedan. I think it's the Q60 now. I can't keep it.
Q50.
Q50. Okay. The Q sedan.
Well, they're all Qs.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just different numbers.
Damn it, Infiniti! Why do you do this?
Hey, don't just blame Infiniti. It's all of the luxury brands do this ridiculous.
Infiniti has always had numbers like alphanumerics, but they changed them.
Yeah, they went from having a different letter for each series and then numbers that represented the engine size to all the cars being Qs and all the utilities being QXs.
And then just random numbers like the 60. We know it's more than the 50, right? There's a Q50, which is Q50 is the I don't even know.
They sort of more or less go up based on size, but not always, because the Q50 is the sedan and the Q60 is the coupe version of that, which is actually slightly smaller than the sedan.
Right, but it's the coupe, so it's one more. It's
right.
Whatever. So wait, so this is basically the G37 replacement is the Q50 Q60. So what's the M class now? What is that?
That's the Q70, which is a long wheelbase version of the Q50.
All right. Anyway, the most striking part about this car was how
what did you like about this car?
How great they are at bending metal. I just like standing back from it and looking at it. I think it's a really pretty car. It's a pretty coupe. And I was looking down the side of the body panel, and there's really deep forming in the body sides. It's a really deep draw. And it crosses 3 panels. So that,
and they're all lined up, right?
That was what got me. The lines all match up. It's a very deep draw. And it's the rear quarter panel is fixed. That's not moving. But the door skin has a ton of positional variables. Like you've actually got the assembly of the door skin under the door frame, and then all of the variables at the hinge adjustment for, up, down, in, out, I'm sure all the axes are named, but there's a lot of different ways that has at least 6 different directions that could move. And then the front quarter panel, the same. There's a bunch of different directions that could move. That line was straight. The tolerance was really tight. And then the panel gaps are small too. I just like, regardless of driving it, it's a really
anybody can do that stuff, right?
That shit's hard. That's.
Are you implying that there are some companies that don't seem to be capable of doing things like that?
I don't think any company was capable of it till pretty recently. Like, just cars have just gotten really, really good in terms of the actual physical design, stamping, assembly, and there are still some automakers who are not good at this. I don't think
anybody in particular you might want to name.
I mean, we've talked about this. I know where you're going.
Can't seem to draw you into this one, huh?
I mean,
you don't want to slam Tesla, huh?
Well, I mean, certainly what I've seen of even the Model S, like they're not going to do a deep draw body panel like this and pull it off. Like the Tesla.
Well, I mean,
really
even with
slabby.
the relatively simple contours that Tesla has on their cars, they are not even close to this level of fit and finish on their bodies. Not even close.
Yeah. I mean,
and worse, it's not just that they're not close; they're not even consistent. If they had wider gaps, if they were at least consistent across all of them, that would be a little more acceptable. But they're all over the map. Some of them are close, some of them are tight, some of them are misaligned one direction, other directions. It's terrible.
Right. That's we've solved that. Like you can go buy a Malibu that has really consistent and tight panel gaps and good paint quality.
Hell,
and
you can buy a Mitsubishi that does that.
Yet not the Mirage.
Okay.
But what? Actually, the Mirage is okay. The paint quality is not great and the panel gaps are kind of large, but I mean, given the price.
But at least they're aligned.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I'm not throwing shade at the Mirage. I think you look at that car and it is what it is, but you start to look around, it's logically engineered and it looks like it was made by people who know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But it's really hard to pull something like this off, although it's subtle. I don't know that everybody appreciates that, but I got to thinking, what caught my eye was the play of light along the body side. And
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my photos from last summer when I had, or last spring when I had the Q60. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's a pretty complex shape that they've stamped, into the front and rear fenders, which are separate pieces of metal, and the door skin, and it's all perfectly aligned all the way across multiple creases.
And if it's out of tolerance or if it's out of alignment by anything more than the tolerance, it's gonna knock the reflection, the shadow or highlights are gonna look weird. And it's going to take you right out of your sort of gaze. You're going to be like, what the hell? And there are cars I spend a lot of time in stop and go traffic. So I wind up looking at these things. There are cars that are consistently like they have funky reflections because of whatever reason. And like it was flawless. I was really impressed with the build quality, just the way the car is screwed together. That's, I think, the other outstanding thing about the Q60. It's just really, it's a celebration of design. It's a beautiful car, inside and out. The materials are good. Everywhere you look, there's a little design touch. So it's a car that pleases the aesthete. There's even just like this little bump on the front fascia.
Yeah, that little crease right above the middle of the grille.
Yeah, it's just this little those kind of things are like they surprise you and therefore they're done well, so they also delight you at the same time. I loved looking at this car. I loved looking at the gauge panel inside. It just, again, there's like little accents.
What did you love? How did you feel about looking at the center console?
I liked all the fingerprints it picked up. No, I like. I'm sure it looks great when it's all cleaned up with a microfiber cloth. It's not great to operate, but it looks at least sleeker and more modern than the Nissan infotainment system that we've all come to know and love.
Or at least know.
In some quotes, right? Like, their infotainment is okay. It's not great. It doesn't go as deep as Sensus, but it's still like it's a little obtuse. You got to hunt and peck for some features. So every media car I get, and this is odd, has a lot of phones paired to it. So some cars only have like 5 slots for phones. So the
first thing you got to do is go in and delete all the other phones.
Right, or at least one. I got to make room. So usually you hit like pair, and it's like, oh, all the phones are full. Would you like to delete one? And you say yes. This one said all the phones are full. Delete one. It doesn't say how. It doesn't take me to delete one. There's not like a delete phones thing. I had to actually search for it. I had to Google search for it. And so what you do is you go into the phone screen and the connect phone screen, you turn Bluetooth off, although I think it'll do it with Bluetooth on, and you actually press the phone, like the skeuomorphic icon button next to it, and then it brings up the delete phone thing. I was like, well, that's completely counterintuitive. That's crappy. So while the physical designers did a fantastic job, the UI designers did crappy work. And that's Nissan, like globally, because I have another Nissan vehicle this week, and it's the same way. So, yeah, that could use some work. Beyond the way it looks, though, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to think of how it drives. What did you think of it when you drove it?
I mean, it's not an all-out sports car for certain.
Right.
I mean, it's not a Z, even though I think, under the skin, I think it actually shares a lot of hardware with the Z, or at least, a lot of the basic architecture with the Z. But it's on, as an all-wheel drive, luxury car with all these amenities on there, it's going to be on the heavier side. I think it's well over 4,000 pounds. But I enjoyed driving it. It feels like a really nice, touring car. And it handles the curves well enough. I think the average driver, is not going to have an issue with it. This is not a GTR by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure. I do wish, I caught myself wishing a couple of times that they made a Z with this engine, because this has the twin turbo 3-liter V6. It's phenomenal.
It's really very good.
It's super punchy. It's nice and refined. It's a smaller VQ, so it's a little smoother. It's a good engine. It's a good transmission. I found that overall I liked the Q60 best in Sport Plus mode. For whatever reason, like it didn't ever get harsh, but the drive modes made a significant difference. And it has steer by wire. And so that it actually, like, the steering is never not numb. It's always numb, but it's at least a little bit better in Sport Plus mode. Otherwise, it just, like, there was a bit of disconnect, and it is not laggy or anything like that. It felt kind of like video gamey. And yeah,
I mean, you don't get anything that resembles natural feedback, but on the other hand, I think it does a good job of tracking the relationship between what your hands are doing with the wheel versus the direction the car is going. I think it feels relatively natural, even though it doesn't necessarily. Did I say it feels natural? I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get the feedback that you're going to get, but the relationship, between the angle of the steering wheel and the direction of the car does feel natural.
Yeah. So
if that makes sense.
You get proportional input or proportional response. Well,
the thing is, it's not, I mean, even a completely mechanical system is not actually proportional.
Right. You get the perception of proportional response.
Yes.
You get what you expect.
Yes, exactly.
But the problem is
so it feels natural and non-natural at the same time.
Right. I just really missed the feedback. That's one of the great joys of driving, is especially a well-designed suspension and steering system. And that's actually one of the things that I really, really liked about the FM platform, was the way, the steering loads up in a turn. You feel it get a little heavier when the tires are working harder. You can tell what's going on. This was nothing. So I don't care how good it is. Without that feedback, you're always going to be, I think, chasing the line. You're going to be putting a little too much in and having to correct. And I just don't ever know that it's going to get natural.
But think of it in the context of who the Infiniti customer is.
That's where I was going.
The person that buys the Q60 is probably not looking for that.
They do not care. And you can hustle the car. This car can be hustled. And it's like, that's where a lot of this stuff falls apart, is like, it works fine for that, normal consumer or the target buyer. But when you actually try to wring it out, then you feel the delay. Yeah, I remember some of the earlier like throttle by wire systems and stuff. you could get ahead of it. You could get ahead of electric boost, electric steering sometimes. None of that happens. You can hustle the Q60 if you want to. It's not quite as rewarding as it could be, and that's kind of a shame. But I think too that eventually they'll figure out how to put some feedback back in there. You apply a little counter torque with the steering, with a motor, and you can get some of that natural feedback back in there. I don't know how much.
Yeah, I mean it's not a trivial thing to do, because it's actually a surprisingly hard software control problem.
Yeah, I bet it's really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, to get that algorithm tuned just right to make it feel natural and give you what feels like natural feedback is hard. It's complex. It's a complicated problem, but it is possible.
Yeah. So it's like everything else, this will get there, and then the packaging benefits that you get from not actually having a physical. Basically a drive, physical shaft, like the steering column that goes all the way to the rack. There's benefit from that. There's also just stark terror when you consider that. There's no physical connection here, but I mean. But
again, the upside is the typical customer of this car is, they're not going to think about that.
Yeah, look, it's like
we are outliers.
Fly. Yeah, airplanes fly without it.
and they very rarely fall out of the sky. So,
that's true. Look, it's not flying that's dangerous. It's crashing.
That's right.
But
it's that sudden stop at the end. It's not the speed that kills you. It's the sudden deceleration.
Right. Exactly. The speed is fine.
Same thing. Sudden acceleration, sudden unintended acceleration. That's not what kills you. It's the sudden unintended deceleration that kills you. We need to get this terminology straight.
Right. This is a good car. This is a good coupe. Infiniti. I think Infiniti outdoes Lexus for sure. If we're comparing their direct analogs, like their direct competitors, Infinitis just feel that much more premium, better designed, better finished, and so I feel like they're playing in a different space, I think, than Lexus, and even in a different space than BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and like Cadillac, I guess, makes some coupes that I don't know. Yeah,
they still make the ATS coupe, which would be the closest thing to this. And you can get the ATS V, which is a twin turbo V6, which is actually a little more powerful than this, but that's probably the closest thing you're going to get from Cadillac. But yeah, you're right. I mean, probably the closest Lexus analog to this would be the RC, and this is
the RC is nice.
Yeah, but this is definitely in terms of style. I mean, you look at this car, and I think this is definitely a step above the RC.
You think so? I'm not sure. Now I'm going to waffle a little bit. I really like the RC too.
I like the RC, but I'm looking at this photo of this car right now, and there's something about this that's of a piece. It's a cohesive design that I think works really well, and it's probably this. I would say it's probably the single best example of the current Infiniti design language. And I think. For a Lexus coupe that is better than this, I think you really need to step up to the LC, which is a significantly more expensive car than this is.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, we have an embarrassment of riches apparently in premium coupes, and that's okay. Right. And this is the Q60.
Let's enjoy it while we can before they all give way to SUVs.
It's completely going to disappear. This was the Red Sport 400, so it was the top of the range.
Oh yeah.
And it had the 20-inch alloy wheels, and it had a carbon fiber package on it. So, it was pretty much the full boat. But the Red Sport 400 starts at 54. And I think with the options it had on it, I think it came up to about $70,000. I don't have the Monroney in front of me, but that's not, again, like it's expensive, but 54,000 is a pretty good deal for it. You add the packages and it starts to get pricey because it had all of the it had Pro Assist and Proactive, and I tried that stuff out. It wasn't bad. It actually took me a couple of days to realize that the lane centering assist kind of stuff was still on. Because it was still trying to figure out like what's going on with the steering, and I was like, what is that weirdness? And it was just it trying to help me out. I'm like, no, I wander all over the lines because I'm on back roads and stuff and looking for the apex. So let's stop that. And it's a good deal. Again, like we talked premium cars this week, and I probably blabbed on too much about it, but two affordable, expressive sort of affordable is in. Again,
affordable in their segments, compared relative to their competitors, they are affordable. I mean, certainly, for the average consumer, they're way out of most people's price range. But if you're in the market for a vehicle of this type, then they definitely fit. And just looking at the Lexus, the RCF, which is probably the closest you're going to get to this, which is actually a little more powerful, but it's also quite a bit heavier. It starts at 65,000.
Right. So it's just gonna top out more expensive once you get everything in it. And I guess the true test was we had an epic snowstorm because we've been having like one nor'easter a week. It was really, really good in that I put it in snow mode. It was nice and stable. The headlights do suck in the snow. They have a lot of scatter. I don't know why, but I kept trying to just shut off the headlights and leave on the fog lamps. It won't do that. Some cars do, some cars don't. This one did not. So it was really, really hard to see driving home that evening. But other than that, it was good in the snow, and it's infotainment. The HVAC controls are outside of the infotainment screen, so it has physical buttons for that. It's like all of the little ancillary stuff is really well done. So, it's a pretty good coupe. I kind of dig it. I hope they sort out the steering. If that's the worst I can say, they've done a pretty good job. Yeah, I mean,
you can't complain too much about that.
All right, let's complain about something else, though.
Okay.
On our list, let's see. So this was like a week and a half ago or so now. GM, one of the executives, was it Dan?
Actually, it was just Monday.
GM. Oh, it feels. Oh, you know what it is? Snowstorms. Screw me all up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah. So on Monday, Dan Nicholson, who is the GM's VP of Global Propulsion Systems, so he's in charge of all the parts of GM's cars that make them go, whether it's with an internal combustion engine or an electric motor. All those folks report to Dan. He spoke at the AFPM conference in New Orleans, I think, which AFPM is the American Fuel and Petroleum Petrochemical Manufacturers Association. And so anyway, he did a talk there, and he made the case for why premium gas or a new grade of premium gas should effectively become the new baseline for internal combustion engines. And so what he advocated for was adopting 95 RON gasoline. And so first, let's a little background on octane. Gasoline. First of all, there is no such thing as pure gasoline. It does not exist in the universe.
But there's a website that says pure gas.
Yeah, well, that's nonsense. You cannot, extract gasoline as there is no one definition of what gasoline is. Gasoline is a hydrocarbon fuel that is typically a mix of primarily octane and heptane, which are two, carbon hydrogen compounds, and then a whole bunch of other stuff to give it various properties. And as you go up and go to longer carbon chains, the fuel has more. Tends to have more resistance to self-ignition. And so that's, octane is an 8 carbon molecule. So basically, they came up with a mechanism for rating gasoline or, engine fuels, liquid fuels, giving them a rating that's relative to pure octane. So anything that has the same self-ignition resistance as pure octane would be 100 octane. And then, it goes down from there because you're blending different stuff. And, lower octane fuels tend to be cheaper to produce, and that's why they're cheaper at the pump. So today we have, the octane you buy in North America, or the fuel you buy in North America, is actually rated with what they call a pump octane number, which is actually the average of the motor octane and the research octane numbers. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically there's 2 different main methodologies for testing octane. And what they do is they take the average of those. That's the number you see on the pump. So regular fuel today is 87 octane, mid-grade is 89, and premium is 91. And 91 octane pump octane is typically about a 95 research octane number. And essentially what Nicholson was advocating for was that essentially a 91 pump octane should be, but it's actually a little bit different from the 91 octane fuel we get today, should be the new standard. And why he wants to do that, and why a lot of automakers would like to do that, is it allows you to run optimize your engines for, if you have a higher, if you're going to have higher octane fuels, you can optimize the engines with a little higher compression. They can run more efficiently. You can reduce the pumping losses, and you can get about 3% or so fuel efficiency improvement from doing that, without really adding anything to the cost of the engine.
Right. The skeptic is going to say, well, this is just, he's talking to petroleum executives. Of course, he wants to advocate for the expensive fuel. But if it becomes the standard and the other ones go away or become less popular, I think the one that gets bought the most is going to actually be the cheapest one. And the other ones will get more expensive, like 80, 87 and 89. If they're still available, would actually rise in price. Sort of the supply demand thing. At least looking into it, that's sort of what I discovered was it may not ever be as cheap because it is a higher grade fuel. But then again, if that's all what they're making and what everybody's buying, it may not wind up being premium. It's just fuel.
Right. And I was on the phone on Monday morning with Dan Nicholson and also Chet Thompson, who's the president of AFPM. And, we talked about that, because I wrote in the article I wrote up about this, I talked about the pricing, and did some basic calculations, and it turns out that, based on today's prices, where average fuel prices are today, it would, there would actually be a significant cost increase to the consumer, to get that 3% improvement in fuel economy, significantly more than, for example, using, 48 volt mild hybrid system. It would, the net cost over 5 years, I think, is what I calculated, would be about $2,000. But that's, based on current fuel prices. And Chet Thompson explained that, only about 10% of the fuel made and sold today is 91 octane premium fuel. And if they made that the standard, if they made 95 raw octane the standard, now that would be the majority of the fuel, and the price would come down significantly. And so that price differential between what we know of as regular today and this new higher octane regular fuel, that price differential, would probably be almost eliminated, if they recalibrated the refineries to do that higher, to produce mostly that higher octane fuel rather than the lower octane fuel. So the cost differential would be fairly minimal. And, Nicholson believes that it would actually be a net benefit to consumers, because with the fuel savings, they would end up spending less. And the advantage, in the past few years, I've had some conversations with people who've advocated going as high as 100 octane. And then if you really optimize the engines for that, you can get even more efficiency out of them. You can get up to about a 10% boost in efficiency. But when you do that, then now you've got to change the pumps to account for that. Because to get to that higher level of octane, you've got to use more ethanol to do it cost effectively, and so now you've got to have protections against misfueling and all kinds of other issues that are going to raise costs. Because you don't want to put that fuel into, or you don't want to put cheaper, lower octane fuel into those engines, because now you have the potential for damage. Whereas,
so is that still an issue really with today's engine management, where if you fuel it with a lower octane fuel, I guess if you do it for an extended period of time, it can cause some damage. Okay. If you occasionally throwing a little bit of lower octane fuel in there isn't going to hurt them. But it can over time, extended use of low octane fuels, so typically what you find today is they'll have, engines will either be labeled as premium recommended or premium required. If it says premium recommended, then it's fine to run it on lower octane fuel. You'll just get less performance. If it says premium recommend or premium required, then it's been more optimized for that higher octane fuel. And if you do run it for extended periods of time on low octane fuel, you can start to cause some engine damage. I wonder how many media fleet cars get fueled on regular just constantly, no matter what they are.
Yeah,
I'm sure my fleet guys
they would never
recommended.
Do that, would they?
No, at least not here. Like the fleet guys here in New England are pretty good with that stuff. But the writers, when we're filling up the cars, I'm sure some of us are like, I'm not putting that much. I'm not paying that much. It's a theory. It's just a theory.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
anyway, basically, according to Nicholson, they modeled all this stuff and figured out that the best balance overall in terms of minimizing cost and maximizing the efficiency improvement is at 95 RON or about 91 pump octane.
So, and at the end of the day, this is an efficiency play. They want to be able to raise compression ratios and boost levels and just be that much safer and run the engines in a higher state of tune and pick up some efficiency that way. And fuel is really almost like an easy way to get there, or an easier way to get there, because right now they've got to take into account those people who, my hypothetical auto writer, are going to just fuel it with 87.
Right. It's, compared to all of the other things that you can do that are going to increase the efficiency of an internal combustion engine, raising the compression ratio is probably the cheapest one, because basically all you need to do is change out the pistons and then recalibrate it. So you're talking different pistons, different software calibrations, but the cost of those pistons, is essentially going to be the same as if you, if you did lower octane fuel. So there's almost no incremental cost to the engine. The only incremental cost you might see is the fuel itself. And even that, they believe, that cost differential will largely go away if they switch over to making that as the baseline fuel.
Yeah. So, what's your take on it? Is it made a little bit of a splash? It's certainly news. I don't know that it's a bad thing. It seems like they've done the study, and it kind of can't hurt. I like engines with more compression. They tend to be a little bit more lively.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, the only concern I have with the whole idea is, I mean, from purely from an engineering standpoint, a mechanical standpoint, higher compression, absolutely a good thing. It's more torque, and you're the way it's working when you have a higher compression ratio and more importantly the expansion ratio in the engine. You're extracting more of the energy out of the fuel during that expansion stroke. And so, that's absolutely a good thing. The only concern I have is, if we do this, are the oil companies actually going to reduce the price gap between 87 octane and higher octane fuels? But, when they start making more of the higher octane fuels, and, why, I don't know why I would think that an oil company might, decide to, take more profit while doing this. But, it just seems like that might turn out to be the case. Yeah, maybe I'm just being paranoid.
It would be frustrating to a degree, but at least like here in Massachusetts, we're still talking about under $3 a gallon for 91 octane. So
right, but how much is regular?
Regular is like 230 to 250, depends on where you are.
So I mean, when I wrote the article, I went through the EIA website. That's the Energy Information Agency, which is part of the Department of Energy. And you can go to EIA.gov and you can find all kinds of amazing data there, including all of the weekly, monthly, and annual average prices for all the different kinds of fuel going back to like the 1970s. And as of the week of March 5th, the national average difference between regular and premium was 52 cents a gallon. Yeah, and to a lot of people, 50 cents a gallon is that's not a trivial amount of money.
Well, it adds up quick if it's 50 cents a gallon and you have a 20-gallon tank. Like it's an extra few bucks there, and it cuts into the cost of something else.
Right.
Notice how I said extra few bucks because I wasn't going to try to embarrass myself and do the math. I've learned in the middle of meetings, I'll be like, "Oh, that's $27," and they'll be like, "What are you talking about?" I have the decimal place in the wrong point. It's the reason why I'm a creative, not a engineer. But yeah, it like you said, it can be real money. So I mean, my hope is that it works like they say it's going to work, and the cost will actually drop. I mean, we'll see if it happens.
Yeah. I think it'll probably happen, but we'll see.
It would, maybe they could take the opportunity to sort of harmonize across every state the fuel requirements, because Massachusetts gasoline is different than Ohio gasoline, which is different than California gasoline.
Yeah, now that's not going to happen.
They're seasonally different too. Like, no wonder why this stuff's so damn expensive.
That's well, part of that, the seasonal differences, they need to do that, in order to make sure that, your car's going to start, during a nor'easter. I'm at the same time to make sure that in the summertime when it's hot, you're not getting too much evaporative emissions.
I like, those are good reasons, but maybe we could say like north of X latitude during these months, we could make reformulated or winter formula gas. Versus like, no, these states are going to be different. Like, that's actually, that's essentially what they do. I mean, it's not, California, I think, tends to be a little more, California is a little more restrictive, but for the most part, it's more based on region than on states. Okay. All right. Well, it would be nice I don't want to make
because I don't think, for example, I don't think the gas that you're getting in Massachusetts is probably any different than what you would get, in Maine or New Hampshire or Vermont, or Connecticut. So, it's more, based on the region and what the conditions are in that region, the weather conditions.
All right. So I was mostly talking out of my ass again. but it just seems like, and I don't want to make oil companies out to be sympathetic characters, but
no, not. I mean, and no one ever should.
Right. Finding ways to sort of be more efficient about what goes into the gas and take the costs out there might help too. But I mean, if there's an emissions trade off to it, I don't endorse that. I like the fact that we can breathe our air and mostly drink our water and swim in our ponds and rivers, and for the meantime. I mean,
don't worry. Scott Pruitt will take care of that problem.
Yeah, clearly. All right, this just wraps up the politics section of the podcast. But speaking of fuel, I think we're done there.
Yeah.
So we can move on to the 2019 Ram 1500 first drive, and that dovetails nicely because trucks use fuel. Maybe this one uses less. Yeah. Maybe.
I think less than the 2018 model, but it's too early to tell exactly what that's how much less. But yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, what did you learn about it? Because to me, the Ram it looks really good, but it also looks like a new nose on an old truck, and that's not what it is. No, not at all. I mean, there's pretty much everything is new on this thing. I mean, keep in mind, within the form factor of a pickup truck, you only have so much flexibility without giving up the things that people actually expect out of a pickup truck. So I mean, it's inherently going to look like a pickup truck. That said,
it looks really good. It's a great looking truck.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's probably the best looking of the current crop of trucks, including the new GM trucks that don't come out till later this fall. But we have, they've already been revealed. I think, this is probably the most stylish and upscale looking of any of the trucks that we've seen so far.
And it really it's not a further sort of refinement of the crosshair grille tractor trailer kind of look. It is.
Well, the crosshair grills are done. No more crosshair grills on Rams.
They've picked the headlights up a little bit. Like it's got a more linear front end to it. It's different, and it's different in a very good way. Like, I mean,
it's more in some ways it's more subdued than the Rams have been for the last 25 years. The headlights, they said the headlights are about 1.5 inches higher up than they were before. So the step down from the middle part of the grill to the fender, has been shortened by 1.5 inches. So it's still there, but it's much more subtle than before. And the crosshair grills are done. No more crosshair grills on Ram trucks. That's a Dodge only thing now, and who knows how long that'll be.
For like the three things Dodge makes.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean the overall look and feel of this truck, on the outside and on the inside was really impressive. And we got to drive. We drove. Ron Sessions and I drove a Laramie. They had some Laramies and Limiteds out there in Arizona when we did this drive, and Ron and I took a crew cab Laramie, which is kind of the mid level of the Ram lineup, and it's the biggest section of their sales. They didn't say exactly what the breakdown was, but I'm guessing it's probably somewhere in the range of 40, maybe even 50% of all the Ram sales are kind of in this Laramie trim level, which on this truck was was really impressive. Almost everything about it was impressive. Just a couple of minor details, that I'll quibble with, but and one of those inside the wood trim that was on the top of the dashboard, the top of the center stack, and on the doors, kind of felt. Kind of looked like, what you would get on some, laminate flooring from your big box store. It was real wood, but it didn't look like the highest grade of wood. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But, I mean, that was like probably my only real, complaint about the the way everything looked. You know, the material, all the rest of the materials inside, the layout was really good. One of the neat little details that they did on this new one that they talked about a little bit, you know, that I hadn't noticed when we saw it in Detroit was, you know, it's got the rotary shift knob, which is becoming standard on a lot of FCA vehicles now, and it's on the dashboard to the, you know, down and to the left of the audio system. But they've also grouped all of the buttons for all of the powertrain related stuff there, you know, transfer case. So, you know, if you've got 4-wheel drive switch or, you know, rear differential lock, you know, different drive modes, all of that is grouped right together. So you don't have to go searching around in different places to find this. It's all in one grouping right there together, which, you know, I think is, you know, really nice detail that, you know, you're not going to notice until you actually need that stuff, and, you know, you realize you don't have to search around for it. It's all there, ready to use.
Yeah, I mean that's important. So a couple of things. Like first, these things expensive. The tradesman starts at $31,000.
Well, okay, that's keep in mind that right now for the 2019 models that they're building now, they're only building dual cabs and crew cabs, or quad cabs and crew cabs.
I can see that.
So if you want a standard cab Ram, they're still building the 2018 models, and so that one, you know, that price is unchanged. You know, those start at like $27,000, and the extended cab, or the dual cab, quad cab. The quad cab tradesman starts at $31,600, which is basically the same price as the 2018 version of the same thing. So the pricing actually hasn't really changed for that. Okay.
Trucks overall then are just expensive.
Yes, trucks are expensive, and I'll get to some more of that later. You know, this Laramie we drove, I think, was about 42.
It starts at 40. The Laramie does, I think. I'm looking at the site now. So it's for the 4x2 starts at 40,690. So if it was a 4x4.
Yeah, we drove a 4x4.
The 4x4 it's 44,190 for the 4x4. So
the thing that really impressed me about this thing was how quiet it was on the road. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the level of refinement in trucks has gone way, way up.
Yeah. I mean, this thing felt quieter, you know, or at least as quiet as the Lincoln Navigator I was driving a couple of weeks ago.
Huh.
You know, and this is on a pickup truck. I mean, it was solid, you know, almost no wind noise. It was really, really good and very smooth ride. You know, the only thing we noticed, you know, in terms of refinement was on a stretch of highway that had some expansion strips. There was a little bit of tire slap that came through, not objectionable. We mentioned it to the Ram engineers, and they said, yeah, we're looking at that, and we might change that particular tire setup to reduce that. But and this was on the optional 20-inch wheels. So other than that, you know, the level of refinement was amazing. And then when we got to the off-road area, when we tried out a Rebel, we took the Ram Rebel with the optional air suspension package, and, you know, going over this rough stuff, the body control was just amazing. I mean, it was almost no body motion. You know, it was just the wheels moving up and down over this rough terrain, and very little, you know, bouncing around. You know, it's like our heads weren't bouncing off the sides, even though, you know, it was, you know, running through the desert in this thing, and it was pretty amazing experience.
That's impressive. Pickup trucks are a high profit center. They've got to make them good. It sounds like they've made the Rams very good. What did you think of driving the e-torque engines? Did you drive the 3.6?
No, they actually did not have the e-torques there yet. So they're doing a staged rollout of, you know, the various powertrains. So for now, there's going to be 3 powertrain options on the Ram. as they starting with the regular Hemi without e-torque.
I didn't know you could get it without e-torque.
Yeah, the Hemi you can get without e-torque. They expect most customers, most of the non-e-torque Hemis are probably only going to be bought by fleet customers. They don't expect too many regular retail customers to buy it without e-torque. And actually, the price premium for the e-torque is only $800. And that's expected to give you a 10% boost in fuel economy, and 130 pound-feet of torque boost on the Hemi.
I think is
so
more,
for $800, yeah, I'd take that.
I mean, you can't buy a turbo for that.
No, absolutely not. So
actually, you probably could, but anyway.
Yeah, so they're building the non-e-torque Hemis right now, and they're already shipping trucks to the dealers, and they should be going on sale in the next couple of weeks. And then sometime in early April, they start building the Hemis with the e-torque, and then around the beginning of May, I think they're going to start building the V6s with the e-torque. So the V6s get standard e-torque. The V8s, it's optional, but it's $800, and they project that the vast majority of customers are going to go for the e-torque on those because of what you get for and the value you get for that $800.
Yeah. I mean, it's an impressive system when you look at the engineering. I looked into it a while ago when they announced it. I like that that's what they're doing now with pickups, is they're looking for ways to actually make them perform better and be more efficient. How did you find that big 12-inch screen? That's the biggest screen I've seen on Uconnect. Is it a new version of Uconnect, or is it? It's
an updated version of Uconnect. So basically the way it works is, it splits the screen into upper and lower cards. And, so if you plug in your phone, for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, it shows that interface in the top half of the screen. And then the lower half of the screen is basically the same as what you get on the current 8.5-inch Uconnect screen. We didn't get a chance to try one of those on the drive itself because they only 3 of the trucks had those, and we didn't get a chance to grab one of those. So the truck we drove most of the time had the 8.4-inch Uconnect system, which is basically the same as what you have in most other current FCA products. And it works fine. It's a reasonably easy to use interface. It's responsive. I did play around for about 15 minutes with the 12-inch one when we got back to the hotel. Played around with it in the parking lot. It's definitely more responsive than Census. The layout is better. I think it's better organized. Things are easier to find. Because like the current Uconnect system, it has, kind of this dock along the bottom of the display, that, gives you, quick access to the various pages that are in there. So you get, things like, you can go to, the navigation and the information screen, the media screen, things like that, with one tap instead of swiping around. So the system is definitely more responsive. The downside to going with the 12-inch screen, to taking that 12-inch display, is if you get the 8.4-inch display, below that 8.4-inch display, you get a bunch of physical controls for your climate control. If you go with the 12-inch display, there's no room for those, and so that's all in the touchscreen.
See, I think I'd rather have the smaller display.
I agree. I think I would be inclined to go with the 8.4-inch system and keep the physical climate control switches. You do, even with the big screen, you do still get rotary volume and tuning knobs. They just move them out a little bit to make room for the screen, but you do still get those. But the climate controls switch to the touch interface. Like I said, it's not a bad interface. It's better than most, but it's still a touch interface, and I'd rather have rotary knobs to adjust the temperature and fan speed and things like that.
Well, pickup trucks that's a hot segment, and everybody's redesigning their trucks right now. We've seen a lot of new announcements over a brief period of time. So as we continue our love affair with the pickup, I think they're only going to get better and more refined. So while they're sort of this like, they're like a Swiss Army knife, right? They're never exactly the right tool for the job, but they're always, they'll get the job done, I guess.
They could be the tool for a lot of jobs that you can't do with any other vehicle. Let's put it that way.
That's a much more charitable way to put it. So, and you wrote this all up for Forbes, so we'll put a link in the show notes as well, so that people can read your well thought out post instead of my rambling questions about it. But yeah, I mean, we're just going to continue to watch automakers beat each other's brains out with trucks, and in the end, if you can swing the credit, I think the buyer benefits.
Yeah. So speaking of trucks.
I was just gonna say, let's move on. So there's not a whole lot we can talk about with this, but where you were the other day, there's a little bit.
Yeah. So yesterday, Ford invited a bunch of people into their product development center in Dearborn, and gave us a bit of a preview of their products that all the new, or most of the new products they've got coming to market over the next 24 months, and there was some stuff that was on the record, and then there was some stuff that was off the record for the time being, and we can't talk about yet.
All the off the record stuff is the coolest stuff that everybody wants to know, and we can't tell you.
Yeah. What I can tell you is that Jim Hackett, the new CEO of Ford, talked about what kind of where, or actually Joe Hinrichs, who's the president of global operations. So he's basically the chief operating officer at Ford now. Talked about kind of where things are, with Ford and where they're going over the next couple of years. And, so they're doing a lot of things to improve their margins and, improve what they describe as their operational fitness. So they're doing things like, the usual things like, reducing number of buildable combinations, by 75%. They're reducing the number of different platforms that they use. And so they're calling it a shift from platforms to flexible architectures. I think that terminology is more of a distinction without a real difference, but nonetheless, what we're going to see going forward from Ford is 5 of these flexible architectures: a front-wheel drive unibody architecture, which will also have all-wheel drive capability; a rear drive unibody. And right now the only rear drive unibody vehicle that Ford makes is the Mustang, but we'll be seeing more of that kind of architecture. The commercial van unibodies, which is like the transit platform, big vans, a body on frame, which is going to continue to be the architecture for pickup trucks, and battery electric vehicles. So that everything coming from Ford is going to be on one of those 5 architectures going forward. And
is that a significant reduction from what they've got now? They have how many architectures right now?
Yeah. So today, I mean, if you look just at cars, you've got the global compact architecture. Well, there's the global subcompact architecture, which is the Fiesta and the EcoSport. And then there's also the B-Max in Europe. There's the compact architecture, which is the Focus and the Escape and the C-Max. And then there's the CD, the midsize architecture, which is the Fusion and the MKZ and the Edge and the MKX/Nautilus, and the Mondeo overseas and other stuff. And the Continental. And then you've got the old, we talked about Volvo earlier, and Ford getting a lot out of Volvo during its ownership period. And one of the big things was the old Volvo P2 platform, which is still around. And it still forms the basis of the Explorer today, right, as well as the Flex and the Taurus and various other models over the years.
The Police Interceptor or whatever they call it. But that's the
Police Taurus and the Police Explorer.
Right. That's the D3, D4, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
So those all go back to that original Volvo S90 platform from 20 years ago. And that's finally going away in the next year or so.
Well, I think part of the problem with that platform is like it can only grow and shrink so much, and I think it seems like that's why Ford has a bunch of other different platforms too currently. So they're trying to reduce that. So they've developed a lot more flexible architecture for this group of 5, apparently.
Right. And so, you'll be seeing more stuff coming off this rear-wheel drive unibody architecture in particular, which I think is interesting. And that's all I can say about that for now. Anything else I say, I'd have to kill you. Let's see. And then, they reiterated that, by the end of next year, 100% of the cars that they build, or 100% of the vehicles they build, will be equipped with 4G LTE connectivity. They're reducing buildable combinations already for the 2018 Edge. They gave as an example. They reduced the number of buildable combinations for the 2018 Edge refresh by 97%, which means that you'll probably only have a handful of maybe a dozen configurations you can choose from when you go to get an 18 Edge, and the Expedition was reduced by 60% compared to the previous generation Expedition. What else here?
That's significant, because part of what happens anyway is that the dealers order them with packages, and Ford is actually pretty shrewd with their rapid spec packages, so that you want that one thing, you got to get the whole package.
Yeah, well, the reason why they're able to do this is because when you actually look at here's you can look at all the different permutations of what can theoretically be built. And if you look at what actually gets ordered and sold, 98% of what gets sold, is usually, that 10 or 20% of, usually maybe 10% or less of the potential buildable combinations. And so what they've done is they've said, okay, for those 2 or 3%, they're just going to have to choose, from one of these other variants, where they might get an option that they didn't want, or they might lose out an option, but it's going to be close enough. And that's what a lot of other automakers, especially the Japanese brands, do. I mean, if you go to a Honda or a Toyota dealer, and you try to buy a vehicle, they're typically, they will have maybe 3 or 4 trim levels on a vehicle. You pick which trim level you want, which color you want, and there's almost no standalone options. If you look at something like a Civic or an Accord, if you factor in all of the different colors, you might have 30, maybe 35 buildable combinations, as opposed to, if you go to a Ford dealer right now and you look at the order book for a Fusion, the number of the number of different permutations you can have with all the standalone options might be in the tens of thousands. And, only a few dozen of those ever actually get sold, but they're there. So, they're simplifying things in that way. And, the thing is, hopefully they stick to it this time, because, there have been lots of times in the past when automakers, especially the domestic brands, have done this sort of thing, where they've reduced the number of buildable combinations, and then over time they start creeping back up again. I mean, Ford has done this before, and GM's done this, and, hopefully this time they actually stick to it.
It almost seems like it goes the other way sometimes too, like, and maybe this is a GM thing. Like when they launch the model, there's a lot of different options and combinations, and then they start to, over the first couple of years, and certainly by the mid-cycle refresh, things have shrunk. So like they're either bundled or they're just no longer available. They get rid of stuff that doesn't sell.
Yeah,
or they
do some of that, but it's still nowhere near what you'll find, at, for example, for particularly Honda and Toyota. They are much more disciplined about about sticking to their limited build combinations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how that should hold prices down, right?
I hope so. Or at least
in the automaker's case, boost profits.
Yeah, at least keep their profits up there so that they can afford to do some of the other stuff that they need to do. Speaking of which, when Jim Farley got on stage and he talked about by 2020, Ford's product mix is going to consist of 86% trucks and SUVs. That's only 14% cars.
I mean, I hope that tracks what consumers are going to be buying. This is the big problem for them, right?
It's definitely moving in that direction. I mean, that this has been the trend. I mean, if you look at the sales numbers over the last 3 or 4 years, when the current Fusion launched in 2012, they were selling 300,000 a year, and now they are on track to hit probably less than 150,000 this year. And, even though, it's a, 5-year-old car, still, that kind of, the thing is that drop is applying to almost every car from almost every brand. They're seeing drops like that on all cars as utilities especially go up.
But this is why their platform, even now, their platform engineering is helping them out, right? Because the Fusion is CD platform. CD platform is also the Edge, right?
Yep, the Edge and the MKZ and the Lincoln MKX.
Have we seen, hopefully, in an ideal world, automaker develops platform, offers 2 different products and 2 different niches on the same platform. When one gets less interesting to consumers, well, okay, can I interest you in an Edge? And it doesn't matter that it's the same platform. It's also there, and it's the right product at the right place. Because a lot of the things that people like in sedans, they also like in crossovers, and the architecture supports that. Have we seen a commensurate rise in Edge sales to track that decline in Fusion sales? I'm guessing
not as much as Ford would like, but fortunately for them, they have seen a significant rise in F-Series sales, which last year, 2017, Ford sold 896,764 F-Series in the United States.
I wonder how much they had to juice incentives to get that number.
Well, for what it's worth, since they introduced the aluminum body F-150 in 2014, their average transaction price on the F-150 has gone up by $6,700.
That's good. They're spending more.
Yeah, and they threw out a few other statistics as well. 2014 or 2017 F-Series sales amounted to $41 billion in revenue. That's just the F-Series. By comparison, Coca-Cola had $35 billion in revenue last year, and Nike had $34 billion in revenue.
Listen, like, shoes are a thing. I can understand making 30-something billion selling shoes. $35 billion for sugar water? People. Stop it. And I know that's not just sugar, that's everything else that Coca-Cola makes too.
That's all their Dasani regular water and all the other stuff too.
So Dasani is city water that they've run through charcoal filters. Enjoy your city water.
But $41 billion just in F-Series.
And what's Ford's cash burn per year? Like
they have positive cash flow.
Well, I mean, like what? I love having positive cash flow. What's their profit? Their profit's not for
the profit last year was about $9 billion.
That's pretty good for an automaker, because like, contrary to popular belief, they run pretty tight margins. So $9 billion's that's not too bad to put in the bank.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons why Ford's been making all these changes is because their margins of their operating margin has only been about 6.5%. And, they were a couple of years ago, they were targeting 8%. And they claim now, Jim Hackett was talking, and he said, he was saying that they're on target to actually, they're on a pace to actually beat their 8% target this year. So we'll see if they can actually do that. But, that's, still, that's, for a full line automaker, having that kind of profit margin is pretty good. Usually, one of the few companies that actually does, significantly higher profit than that is Porsche. I think their operating margins are around 18%. But few if any full line automakers get into double digits on their profit margins.
Yeah, and it's usually the premium ones.
Yeah. So what else we got here? So there's a new Escape coming, and a new Expedition coming, which we will probably be seeing. We'll probably see at least one of those before the end of this year. Maybe both of those before the end of this year. And one of the interesting things that they threw out there, the current generation Explorer debuted in 2010 as a 2011 model. So it's almost 8 years old now. And even though it's been on the market for 8 years, it has actually increased sales every year since it came out. And last year was its best year of the current generation, and one of the best years ever. They hit almost 250,000 units last year with Explorer.
That's wait, how many Explorers?
Almost 250,000 last year.
That's a lot of old Volvos.
Yes, it is.
And that's not including the police version, or is including the police version?
I'll have to double check. I'm not sure, but I think when they say Explorer, I don't think that includes the police version, because technically, in Ford's nomenclature, that's actually a separate nameplate. That's not actually an Explorer, even though it is an Explorer. They break out the sales of that as the Police Interceptor utility. So they don't even label that as an Explorer, even though it is an Explorer. So what else? Some of the other things that they talked about is, by 2020 going forward, all of their new SUVs and crossovers are going to be available with hybrid powertrains, and either hybrid and or plug-in hybrid powertrains on every sport utility and on most of their trucks going forward. And so, including the Explorer and the Escape that are coming soon, both of those are going to have hybrid versions, as is the new Bronco, which they dropped a teaser of, as well as another new off-road utility, which is
don't get yourself in trouble.
No, well, I'm looking at the materials. I'm looking at the slides of the on the record stuff. And they dropped they showed a teaser, showing the Bronco with a cover on it, so you can see the basic profile of it. And, if you like the old original first generation Bronco of the early 70s, I think you'll like this one.
Okay. I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Another sort of vehicle to compete with the Jeep Wranglers. Not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're really right now, I don't know that there really is anything that's really a direct competitor to the Wrangler today. No,
I don't think that, I saw my first, was it JL Wrangler. I think it was yesterday morning. Man, that thing looks good. They did a nice job on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice update. I'm looking forward to driving one soon.
Well, yes, me as well. It's the perfect time of year, Jeep, to send one to me, because we're having nor'easters again, because global warming, the Chinese conspiracy is happening.
No, there's no. So anyway, haven't you heard? There's no such thing as global warming.
Right.
It's not true. It's all a hoax.
Listen, weather is not climate. Just whatever. We're delving into that part of the podcast again. Okay. So anyway, I think, Ford has a lot more to come when you can talk about the other stuff you saw, which is indubitably very much interesting and impressive and cool. Ford has some stuff up its sleeve, so that'll be good to see. So we'll just tease that now, and when you can talk about it again, you will.
Yep. Well, and I mean, one other thing I can say right now is they will be unveiling the new Aviator week after next at the New York Auto Show. So the Lincoln Aviator, the Aviator's back, as a Explorer-sized SUV, and that's coming back. And I think people will be surprised at some things about that.
They better try to sell it, because they have the Continental, which it's a good car.
Yeah,
they're not telling us about it. Like, what the hell, guys?
I know.
Maybe that's. I just like Lincoln has been on the ropes for so long, they have to actually invest in getting their story out there, and I don't think they are.
You need to put together a Continental commercial, and I'll send it to Kumar Galhotra.
You know what? I will do that.
Do it, man.
I should call up and get a Continental so I can make a commercial. Ford's pretty tight with their fleet lately. Yeah. So we'll do that. In the meantime, though, before we close out the show, I had a chance to talk to former Autoblog podcast alum. I know you and Zach Bowman didn't directly work together. I think he actually filled your slot when you left Autoblog. And so he was on the podcast with us after. But people were asking what he's up to. Zach and I finally had a chance to connect. So we caught up a little bit, and I would like to have him back on the show so he can do an episode with us when we can make that happen. And we have a couple of other people who are also interested still. Alex Nunez keeps blowing us off. Sorry. He's a very busy man.
Hey, he's a VP at Ketchum these days.
No, I know he's legit busy, and it's hard to schedule, and it's just things are tough. So Zach and I caught up, and we talked about some philosophical car discussions. So I'll just cut that in here, and then we'll come back and wrap up the show.
All right.
So Zach, people have been asking about where you've been, because it's like you dropped off the face of the earth. Kind of
drop off the face of the earth. So after the trip, obviously I'm trying to figure out what that sort of work-life balance thing looks like, and part of that is limiting the amount of time that I spend on the road, and that means taking fewer stories or being more careful about the stories that I do choose. And that inevitably leads to lower exposure.
Yeah. I mean, and part of that though is like you've been on kind of like a Twitter diet, and I don't Facebook, so I don't know if you're there or something. But I don't know where to find the stuff that you're working on. Where can someone read your stuff lately?
Well, I've been doing a lot of work with Automobile lately. They've been kind enough to give me a home. So there's usually something once a month or so from those guys. And I've also been doing a lot of bike work. So stuff with motorcyclists and Cycle World. Stuff that I just find a little bit more personally satisfying to be working on.
Well, you don't like flying to different parts of the world every 2 weeks and trying to jam out stories that are the same as the press release over and over again?
Well, I know that sounds incredibly entitled.
No, it's not. It's not entitled.
No, it is. It is. I am fully aware of that, and I know that it's. Can we curse on this? I can't remember. I can never remember. It's unfortunate. I'm going to say shitty. It's shitty to turn your nose up at experiences that a younger you would have, been over the moon to do. And I've always said that if I find myself in that situation where I'm so jaded that I, don't look forward to go driving a Lamborghini or whatever, then I probably don't need to be doing it, right? There are other people who are better suited to be doing that stuff. So, that's
a mature and a refined way to look at it. And the younger you part of it is key though, like, because you're not the same person forever. So you wind up doing these things, and the industry looks a little different from the inside than it does outside looking in, and builds up your base of experience. So I'm not trying to get you to say that you don't want to do things for money, because that's what we all want to do, is things for money.
Well, sure. I don't know, man. The run up to the trip was, I very much burn out at Road and Track. The travel was a lot. and the stories I was writing they weren't necessarily the most fulfilling. And I'm not saying that every job should be fulfilling, but in an industry where it's very much creative, it's easy to just sort of hit a point where you're just phoning everything in, and I saw that coming, and I didn't want that to happen. Because I've loved cars. I've always loved cars from the time I was a kid on, and it's really disheartening to see something that you have such a passion for become relatively gray in your eyes, So
yeah. Well, and I think too, in a business or a career track that is based on you're only as good as your portfolio. That's your calling card. That's your resume. If you're not doing your best work, it's hard to build that portfolio, and it's also hard to stand behind it. So, yeah, I mean, that's some of the stuff. I think we all kind of struggle with that if we do it long enough, and that sometimes leads to some of the moves. Sometimes the moves are forced through layoffs or just other corporate things. And I think that's one of the things that led me to actually step away from Autoblog was like the same thing as like just looking at it and going, you know what, they're moving in a different direction. I'm sort of weighing them down. They've been good about sort of sticking with me, but I can see that they want to be doing something different than I want it to be. So let's just call it a day and back off from that. And so, the trip I think was sort of a couple things for you, right? Like it was a series of events that led up to it, and then it was its own thing, and now you're on the other side of that. So you sold the truck, and what's the rest of the?
No. I sold the camper.
Oh,
the
you
truck
kept
we
the
still
truck.
have.
All right.
Yeah, so the truck's got 340, like right at 340,000 miles on it now.
That's like a member of the family.
Actually,
that's never going to leave the family. It's still like the trusty companion. It's the dog that just won't die.
Well, it's hard, right? Because it's still such a good tool, do I necessarily have a 100% need for a 3/4 ton flatbed pickup truck in my life? No, I'm not a farmer. But, I still do quite a bit of remodel work for friends and family. So moving material around, it's very handy. Between my father and I, we're always dragging crappy cars around, and it is exceptionally good at that. It's just a good thing. I have found myself sort of paying the piper in terms of all of the sort of delayed long-term maintenance that we didn't keep up with while we were on the trip. It actually just got out of the shop for tires and inner axle seals up front. It was like $2,000. I lost a U-joint on the left side on the interstate like a month ago. That was fun. That was like $500. Last October, I had the clutch fail, which it was not the original clutch, but it was the original clutch to me, and it lasted the entire trip. And then I got pissed at somebody in traffic and darted around him, and the thing threw a spring.
Oh no!
So clutch and flywheel was like $800, and then the pilot bearing had failed at some point. So the input shaft was just like wallowing around in there. So destroyed the input shaft. And because it's the MV5600 and not the 4500, in order to replace the input shaft, like the 4500, you just take 4 bolts out and then pull the entire input shaft out and throw a new one in there. Well, the 5600, the entire gear set has to come out of the back of the transmission, right? One of the unfortunate things about the death of the manual transmission is that no one works on a manual transmission anymore. So of the 11 transmission shops that I called within a 2-hour drive, one guy said he could do it, and it would take 3 weeks.
3 weeks? Like, it's not that hard. Like, I mean, it's hard, right. But it's like, if you know manual transmissions, it's like, take this piece out, put...
Right.
That's really frustrating.
But guy was backed up, right? So I found a local guy who said he could do it. Long story short, he could not do it. He destroyed the transmission. So my otherwise okay transmission wound up being scrap. I had to get a reman for $4,500. Yeah. So, just one thing after the other. And it's not the truck's fault. Like, all of these things, it's a big mile machine, and we thoroughly abused it over that year. We had, I think the truck weighed in at like 11,800 pounds with all of our crap and fuel and water and all that fun stuff on board. So it was definitely working last year, and it wasn't like we just spent all that time on the highway. We were often rough and tumble places. So, but it's still around. We had a little CRV for a while that I fucking hated, and we got rid of that. It was a terrible car, and I bought it. I bought it because I have two friends who also have them, who I will not name. You know who you are, and they convinced me that it was the right move for a family car. Right? It was a manual transmission, so second generation manual transmission.
That's not terrible.
Right. See, this is the logic, right? You're going, okay, it's got a K24. Right, which is a good little motor. Right. It's got a manual transmission, which is an okay little transmission. It's all-wheel drive, quote unquote, so it should be okay in the snow. It should get pretty good fuel economy. None of these things are true. It got 17 miles to the gallon, Dan. 17. How is that possible?
Is part of the problem you?
No. I mean, that's just what it gets. Like, the best that I got out of that thing was 21 miles to the gallon.
I could see 21. It's like, because it's like
terrible.
It's heavy and I don't know.
It makes no power, none. Like oh my god, it was absolutely terrible. It's a 5-speed, right? This was like right at that breakover point in Honda, where we went from like good Honda to what happened to you, Honda. So like, it's the same gearbox that's in the Civic Si and the TSX. They just didn't put 6th gear in there. So like, there's a place for 6th gear, and there are guys who will take their transmission apart and put 6th gear in there for a whopping $400 using brand new Honda parts. But the car didn't come with 6th gear.
Maybe you should have had one of those guys fix your truck transmission.
Yeah, not kidding. Anyway, so we got rid of that thing, and we bought an E46 wagon.
That is a terrible idea. That is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea.
E39, excuse me.
That's an even worse idea.
No, it's great. It's a great idea. It's a great idea, buddy.
I'm sure it's lovely to drive, but
it's sublime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually good. No, I was right first. It was an E46. Sorry, I'm still recovering from bronchitis, so you'll have to excuse me.
That's fine. No, the E46 is
that's great.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's everything that the CRV is not, right? So it's entertaining to drive. It looks good. It's so easy to work on, Dan. So easy.
Well, because
and
you
all
have
the
to.
Problems are known. Yes and no. I mean, it's the last of the good BMWs. That's true. It's no Crown Vic. It's no Crown Vic, but it's made to be worked on.
The Crown Vic is not easy to work on. They stuff that giant engine in that engine bay. You can't get your hands on. I do, and there's like sharp metal, and it cuts your hands up and shit. I do not like that car.
Yeah.
I don't think it really likes it tolerates me. But the E46, like that's the thing, right? The European cars and BMWs in particular, they have stuff that breaks, but they know it's going to break. Mm-hmm. And so they design it to like, hey, we're going to like in 120,000 miles, like this whole Gonecta-Gazoink here, it's going to blow up and fall off. But you can replace it, and we'll sell you the assembly, and here are the steps to fix it. and it makes logical sense. And I always found them easy to work on, if sometimes a pain in the ass.
Yeah, no, so far, I mean, I guess we put like 6,000 miles on it so far, but so far it's been an excellent little car, blue on black, sport package. You
have had to look a long time for that too. Like that's not an easy car to find, an E46 Touring.
No, it's they're out there and they're getting cheap. Like we picked this one up for $4,000. And it had 100,000 miles on it.
That's low. That's low for that car.
Yeah, it's not bad. And they're out there. It's not a manual. It's an automatic. The conversion to manual is not difficult. So the idea is that once we have a garage again, I'll keep an eye out for a 330 donor and 330 MT it. So that's the idea. What else? Got the 77 230 Mercedes still. That I drove across the country. I paid $475 for.
Oh, that's right.
In Seattle.
Right. What about Project Ugly Horse?
Jesus fuck. Yeah, still got it. I just bought my 4th oil pan. Man, all right, so here's the thing, right? So, in the 5 years that I have been screwing with this stupid car, Ford has since come out with its own version, and at some point this dawned on me, and I thought, well, shit, I'll just start ordering Mustang 2.3 parts and bolt them to my 2-liter, and we'll be gravy train and get this thing done and going. So I look up parts, and primarily what I'm looking for is a windage tray or some sort of oil baffle to keep the oil in place under cornering so that the pump doesn't cavitate and I don't, lock up the motor. That would be bad.
Yeah.
So I find the parts on the Ford parts page, and it includes the whole assembly. It includes the pan, the baffles, the whole 9 yards, and it's like $90. Cool. Send it my way. I get it, and there are no baffles inside of it. None. Not a one. And I call up the dealer that I procured it from, and they say, well, no, it shows right here that all of those parts are included. And I say, well, they aren't. And then that was the last I heard of it.
Excellent.
So I think yeah, it's perfect, yes. It's the second time this has happened, ordering parts off of Ford's site. So I don't know what's going on there. But, it's hanging out in my dad's basement, which is like 30 minutes away, and it's just far enough away to be a pain in the tail. And, got a million other things going on. I don't know. I am still desperately trying to finish it. I probably should have sold it when we left Knoxville, but I didn't. So there you go.
There's sentimental value in it. And
I don't think it's that anymore. I honestly don't think it's that anymore. Like I don't feel a whole lot for the car. I would honestly rather put a twin cam in the 230 and a manual transmission in the 230 and maybe a small lift and just drive around on that. But I don't know, man. 5 years is a long time to be screwed with anything,
Yeah, I got to about 3 on the Volvo, and I was like, you know what? Forget it. It's done. Mm-hmm. Like I have recognized my own limitations, and it's not the car, it's me, and I'm never gonna fix it, and it's just sinking into the earth. So off it goes.
Yeah. The Mustang is not far from being done. It just is not done. So there you
go. That's a good kind of segue to, when we were at Autoblog, or like when we last talked, I was still with Autoblog, and you guys were in the midst of your trip, and so there was a lot of like self-discovery. So like in the aftermath, for like, what did you learn about yourself by doing that thing? I'm sure, because people were like, oh, it's nuts, and you were like, you know what, I just have to do it, and that's, who can't respect that? That's fine. But what did you come on the other side of that to sort of like to realizations?
What did we come on the other side of that? I think we came out with a greater appreciation for the people in our lives. And I know that sounds not contrite, but obvious maybe. But, more than anything, the trip allowed us the chance to go and see the people that we, always said, hey, we're gonna come visit you at some point, and never did, or the 8 or 9 years that Beth and I had been married at that point. And there's something really excellent about being able to drop into people's lives and see their world and see what they love about the places that they live. And I think in the U.S. specifically, we're so territorial about our vacation time that when it comes time for a vacation, we want something sort of predetermined or prescribed. How many people do you know that go to the exact same place for vacation every year? Whether it's the same beach house or the same cabin in the woods. Yeah, exactly, right. And for good reason, right? Because you don't want you get so little time. You get 10 days or 20 days or whatever that you don't want to waste it, or you don't want to feel like you wasted it, right?
Yeah.
And when you do something new, it's a gamble, right? It could wind up terrible. It could wind up that you blow your only 5 days of free vacation that isn't soaked up by holidays in some sort of travel nightmare or staying in some sort of terrible guest room or something. And nobody wants to do that. But, the chance to go and be with people, it was always better than I thought it was going to be. I'm not a huge extrovert, obviously. And I like a certain amount of routine and stableness, but being open to those experiences and being with those people, it was awesome. And I don't know, it gave us a better appreciation for that. And I think since then we've been more determined to make that a part of our lives. So there you go.
Yeah, clearly I think it made you and Beth sort of a tighter unit, or at least what it sounded like the last time.
Sure.
You face down stark terror together. It's a certain amount of bonding.
Yeah.
So do you find yourself in certain situations like recalling stuff that happened, and using that experience as a guide for like how to behave in this situation and what to do, or just like, just a way to drive more patience or less patience or whatever, just like how is that sort of continuing to pay off?
Not so much in the more or less patience.
You don't say.
Yeah. I don't have a great memory. I think that's sort of a byproduct of past nonsense. But there was something about the way in which we lived last year, or the year before last, rather, that was very vivid, And there are certain things, whether it's a temperature or a shift in light of the leaves or a smell or something, that will light off these memories of being places from that time in my head. And it also makes it really difficult to tolerate the unfortunate routine of life, Mowing the grass is particularly rough, right? Where you are just sort of pacing around the same, half acre of ground over and over and over again, when you know that there's such a large and vast continent out there waiting for you. I don't know. It's, I think I expected, or I hoped, that we would come out of that thing having gained some sort of perspective that was difficult to acquire otherwise. And it's not the case. It's having another piece of the puzzle, but it's not having the whole thing put together. And it's almost more frustrating now than it was before we left, I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing, like I said before, was balance, and trying to figure out where that line is between living your days and working your days, And I very much acknowledge that I'm working less now, and I'm making substantially less now, but my time is very much my own, So if a buddy calls up and says, "Hey man, I want to go buy a motorcycle, or I want to go work on this bike," or Dad calls and says, "Hey, I need a hand with this," I'm much more likely to tell work to fuck off and go be there. I don't know, and
you get to that point. And some of it is just being like a comfort level. I feel like you spend your 20s and 30s, you're like your early career, almost scared a little bit. Like, what if they discover I am not as good as I told them because you go through that crisis of confidence on a regular basis. But also just like, what if I don't act like it's a prison? Like, no, these people, like they're my employer, they own me. And at a certain point, you go, no. Like, if there's a problem, we'll talk about it, but I'm going to go do this. Like, family or
right.
life or whatever is much more important. And you go and you make the time for that. That takes a while to get to.
It really does, and it's also because it's not something that's taught to us. It's there, but it's hidden in the subcontext. It's not overt. And I think that might also be a shift in employment that's happening now with our generation, because before, I think you were expected to give your employer as much as you could, with the understanding that your employer would take care of you, certainly now, but also in the future going forward. And that's not the case anymore. It's increasingly rare to find someone our age who has an employer-employee relationship where all of their benefits are taken care of to a satisfactory level, and they have a retirement and a pension that's set up to take care of them in the future. And I certainly don't see any reason to give an employer all of my time, or certainly prioritize my time for them over that of my friends and family, if that's not the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a weird kind of balance. I think that it just only comes with putting your dues in, and it kind of makes me boil a little bit when you see all the even the flippant discussion of like, oh, these young kids coming up, they want this stuff, they want perks, and they want this quality of life. And it's like, well, who doesn't? Like,
right.
I'm not a millennial, but I understand where they're coming from, and look at what we've done to these kids. Like, well, they're killing X or Y. No, they can't afford to do it because their grandparents have screwed them out of stuff. So it's just
I don't know, it's challenging, and everybody's got their issues, but I certainly don't want to wade off into the weeds here, but
no.
the number of guys our age who make a pretty decent living and still feel like they're barely pulling the ends together, it's not a small number, man. It's most of the people I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly count myself among that too. I mean, some of it is just the shit you do to yourself.
Sure, absolutely, but it's a level of stability that seems, or instability that seems foreign, especially when you talk to the older generations.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the trade-off there is time, right? And if you can prioritize your time in a way to be there with your friends and your family, then fine. That's an acceptable price to pay, as far as I'm concerned. So
all right, let's shift gears. so you're back in Virginia, but it also sounded like you fell in love with the desert Southwest. And why? Like, is it the lonesome desolation? Like the idea that, you know what, if I just want to disappear, I can do that real efficiently here?
Yeah, it's part of that. It's also such a foreign beauty, especially coming from the East Coast, where there are so many people, and even places where there aren't that many people, like where I live now. Like this is a county that's 300 square miles that might have 30,000 people in it, maybe. But that's still a lot by Western standards, and you really feel it when you drive across the country, right? There's something that happens coming from west to east, right around Missouri, where suddenly you look up and there are infinitely more people on the road than there were before. Being able to get out and away from people, and not just like a little bit, but to where you will not see somebody for 2 or 3 days, that's exceedingly rare in this country, and probably even this world, at least the civilized Western world. It's something that people in Europe just don't have. It's not a thing for them,
Yeah.
It's incredibly valuable, and I can't explain it. It's a level of peace and togetherness, like put togetherness, that is very difficult for me to replicate. And it's just great, and the desert is beautiful. The smells and the weather and the animals. It's a landscape that also requires a lot more attention. It's easy to sort of paint the landscape with a sort of sameness, where you look out and you just see beiges and browns and reds, and it just looks like desert. But with your boots on the ground and at eye level, everything has a flower, especially in the springtime, and they're all different, and they're all unique, and they're all just gorgeous.
And they're all ready to kill you.
Yeah, some of them are, but that also makes it fun, It's and I like being somewhere where I'm out of my comfort zone. Having grown up in Appalachia, I more or less know what in these mountains wants me dead. I don't know out there, so you just have to sort of treat everything with a little bit more care and a little bit more wonder than you would otherwise.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like the landscape equivalent of riding a motorcycle. You just have to be on guard.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very similar. So, I don't know. I think if Lucy wasn't part of our daughter wasn't part of the equation, we would have given more serious thought to settling somewhere out there. But kids need infrastructure with schools and family and all that stuff. So
there's time.
Here we are.
There's time. It goes fast.
Yeah.
So all right, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of my little notes. But are you driving anything fun besides the E46? Anything? We'll start with anything fun.
Okay, I just got back from Lake Sakakomi, which is about 2 hours north of Montreal, where I drove a handful of Lamborghinis on a frozen lake.
That doesn't sound like it sucked.
It did not. Lamborghini has this program called the Squadra Corse, which is basically an experience driving program, right? That starts off with like a basic track day and like familiarizing people with how to go fast on a track, and then steps up to car control stuff like this Winter Academy, which is what this was, where they teach you, the finer aspects of car control in a low grip, low speed environment. And if you have the money as a Lamborghini owner and you want to pursue it, that track will run you all the way to the Super Trofeo series, and then eventually all the way up to the company's GT3 program. So it's basically like a big funnel, a big feeder series for guys. It was wild. We drove Hurricane Performantes and Aventadors out on the ice. The Hurricanes all had studded Pirelli winter tires on them. The Aventadors were a little more hilarious. They had studded summer tires in the rear and just winter tires up front. And you want to talk about a loop machine, buddy?
I bet.
You breathe on that throttle and it wants to come around. But it was great. It they sort of turn you loose on like a 1.5 kilometer track through the ice, and of course you've got instructors there that are all pro drivers. Some of the guys were from NASCAR. Some of the guys and girls. Some of the girls were sports car drivers. All very talented. All great at sort of coaxing you through the thing. It was a lot of fun. It was a real blast.
Did you go like, oh, no, I got this. I powerful car, loose surface. I just hold my beer.
I will say there was a certain familiarity to high school parking lots there, but that was fun. It was really good, and the cars are freakishly adept at it. You know, the all-wheel drive systems in those cars, they're set up to, under the majority of circumstances, put 90% of the power to the rear axle. Which means that under first and initial hard application of throttle, it behaves just like a rear-wheel drive car, right? Just instant kick sideways. And then once you're sideways, you can ease into the throttle, and it will push up to 50% of the power to the front axle. So you get in trouble, you ease into the throttle, and the car just sort of claws its way, in the direction that you want to head. And it's very impressive. It was fun. It was a blast.
So that's the fun side. Now, what have you been driving that's not fun besides like broken trucks and stuff?
That's pretty much it, man. I'm fully off of a rotation now, so it's few and far between, which is kind of nice. There's a certain level of perspective that comes through there. I think it's easy for guys who run a rotation to just sort of see a $35,000 or $40,000 sticker on a Camry or whatever and just sort of shake it off. But when you're not in that all the time, like, that's a shit ton of money. And I certainly don't know a lot of guys who would be willing to turn around and drop that kind of cash on a brand new car,
Yeah, I think so Sam and I just did the podcast yesterday, and I was talking about the TSX A-Spec, which I really liked, and one of the comments was that I made was like, well, it's kind of cheap. It's like $45,000, and that's not cheap. It's just for what it is.
It's not cheap.
It's priced against cars that are much more expensive. So that's true. Like, actually still being on a rotation, it does mess with your perspective. It's easy to definitely what?
I think it just desensitizes you. It just desensitizes you, right? Like, you just it's not that you stop seeing it. It's just that when you're in those cars that often and you just see those stickers and you're like, well, the last one was 75, so like, it does happen. It happens quick,
Yeah, I think if you let it certainly does.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, like, certainly that's one of the things that is actually kind of a turnoff of the automotive journalism industry, is like all these regular dudes who aren't making big dollars are driving big dollar stuff, and you do get out of touch with it. And if you flip it around though and understand, okay, so this is a benchmark of what $50,000 buys, and compare that among other things that are roughly the same price, you can start to continue to make sense of it. The best thing to do is go and price one out, like on the website, or just work the math, right? Like, look at common auto loan terms, right, and try to put it in that way. Okay, so you go, either I'm putting no money down, I'm rolling the down payment into the loan, or I'm just like, we're financing everything, or it's going to cost me $5,000 off the top, and I'm financing $40,000 over typical terms, or 60 months, 72 months.
Which is insane, right?
Times the interest rate.
What is that car worth after 72 months?
You got to buy well, for sure. But when you think about that, you add in the interest rate and calculate just the raw cost, not even getting into stuff like insurance. And you go, wow, it's going to cost me X amount every month. it's really easy to drop $400 a month on a car. And it's and like a pretty average car, a car that most people would sniff at, like a Camry or an Accord. Nothing fancy.
That's right. That's big money, man. It's big money.
I mean, in a lot of places, that's what, like half Virginia, a mortgage?
Yeah, exactly. And here in Virginia, we've got personal property tax. So the Dodge being a 2003 with 340,000 miles on it. Last year, the personal property tax on that truck was $260. And we get 50% tax relief. So it was really like, what, $520 or something? For a 15-year-old truck with over 300,000 miles on it. So you can imagine what these guys are paying on a truck that's $70,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
insane. I don't know how people are doing it. I honestly don't. Cheap credit, I guess.
I think that's probably part of it, or leasing, which is just sort of another arm of cheap credit. It does mess with your perspective, though, for sure, to be in lots of brand new stuff all the time, and you get kind of numb unless you're actually experienced in paying this stuff. Some of the people that we came up with too, like they're still like they're renters, they're not
right.
They don't have families. Some do, but it puts you in a different place where you're like, yeah, cars are important, but they're not. Like I need to fix my house.
Not important.
Like
right. Exactly.
It's pretty easy to drop option package money on a roof, for example. And things like that.
Yeah.
It's it's an interesting industry though, for sure. It sounds like you're in a settled place. You're much more calm and at ease than the angry young Zach we know from the podcast of yore.
Yeah, we just didn't get on the right subjects, I guess. No, I don't know. It's nothing. It's funny you use the word settled. Nothing feels settled. We've been here for a year. We still don't know if Virginia is going to be where we wind up permanently. Work is come and go, and I don't know. I mean, that year on the road had a big price, and I think we're still paying it. And it still seems worth it at this point, but I don't know. Ask me again in a year.
Well, you know what? Like, it's not like you can undo it. So
no, exactly.
Kind of live with the aftermath.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like I said, it still very much seems worth it to me. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, we'll find if you're game, we'll have you back on maybe me, you, and Sam. We can all bitch about other car stuff, and we'll get you cranked up.
It sounds good. That sounds like a deal.
All right, I'll let you get to your afternoon and your little people and everything. But thanks for taking the time to update, because your fan base does eagerly hang on all of your words.
I find that hard to believe, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right. And that's the end of podcast 61 or episode 61 for Wheelbearings.
And don't forget to tell all your friends about it if you like the show, and leave us a rating on iTunes or somewhere, and just let us know if you have any thoughts or questions. You can drop us a note on Twitter or use the email link on the website at wheelbearings.media, and we'll try and answer your questions.
We'll do our best. If not, we'll just say some stuff.
Yeah. Well, we do that. We always we always manage to come up with enough words to fill however much time we have allotted to us. It's funny. I was at a conference, speaking at a conference this week, and because of the weather that you guys have on the East Coast, there were upwards of 1,000 flights canceled. And so a couple of people that were supposed to be at this conference couldn't make it into town. And so the organizer asked me if I'd be willing to sit in on one of the panels, and I said sure. And said, what do you think we can talk about for an hour? I said, oh, don't worry, we'll fill the time with words, and we did.
Hey, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's all it's needed is just an open time slot. So yes, and
just
actually,
turn on the mic and let us go.
Right. It's like wind up. The people that we advised about car purchases, please don't let us forget the good or bad or horrific experience you had taking our advice or ignoring our advice because you realized we were full of beans. So I'd love to hear how some of those turn out.
All right. We'll talk to you all next week.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.